Welcome back to Arise Primetime, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, this week, the Nigerian Senate summoned key security chiefs to appear before it over the allegation by the American Congressman Scott Perry that USAID had indirectly funded terrorist activities in Nigeria. It followed the motion moved by Senator Ali Ndume calling on the Nigerian government to investigate the claim, saying it had to be taken very seriously indeed, and it was of the utmost importance to, in his words, verify the veracity of such a weighty allegation. And still with me are our guest commentators, the public policy analyst and development expert Abba Kaka, who's found his way into the main studio now, and we're very glad to have him, the legislative consultant and public policy analyst Okereke, and of course the Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmood Jega, decided to vacate his seat so that Abba Kaka might come in, and we're very grateful to him for that. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for staying with us, Chibuzo, and great to see you, Abba Kaka. And let me come to you first. Okay. I wonder what you make of you are from Borno State, and yes, obviously that was the epicenter of Boko Haram. I mean, yes, do you believe that what the U.S. Congressman was saying was credible?
Well, thank you for having me again, and Happy New Year. Actually, I do, because there's a lot of conspiracies over the years, in the last 12 to 14 years of Boko Haram and the insurgency itself. So I'm really happy that, this is being blown out, because the truth is now coming out. Even though sometimes you may like President Trump or you hate him, he is looking for the truth in most times. I'm not a fan of the president himself, but on this particular issue and other issues that I see he's driving, the point is that this needs to be investigated further. And even the Nigerian military, the CDS, also said in the past. And some of these NGOs were also, found wanting in some cases. As first, I commend the senator from Borno South, Senator Ndume, for bringing it up, because he's a man of principles and integrity, and it takes that to bring it up in the kind of Senate we have today. Secondly, the fact that these USAID funds are being channeled to terrorism and insurgency is not news. This is just being blown by Rick Perry, the Republican House member, that he came up with this issue. And it needs to be, last time was a couple of days ago, the American ambassador here in Nigeria that, met with the Nigerian governors and others, denied the issue. But denial itself is not enough. It has to be investigated. The military has to go down and investigate all these things. We in Borno State knew all along that something like that was happening.
Right.
Because some of
But we don't know for a fact
we don't know
that
for
it
a
is
fact.
happening. That's why it needs to be
But
investigated.
now that is
right.
coming up from the American Congress, and
well, it's coming up from a
congressman, means a lot.
And there have been allegations against that congressman,
Indeed,
saying that he's also trying to play to the gallery and,
yes,
and to kind of
indeed,
curry support from
yes,
President Trump by saying the things he thinks that Mr. Trump would like to hear, which
yes,
is why I agree with you. It
yes,
needs to be investigated. And of course, Chibuzo Okereke, as a legislative consultant yourself, I mean, it is obviously the kind of thing that the Senate is expected to kind of look into, bring people to come and testify, tell us what they know. But potentially this could actually go beyond USAID and touch on a very crucial element, which is how these, groups actually get funded.
Absolutely. And your fuel can only keep on when it's being powered by something. Yeah. So since 2019 now, for the terrorism to fester in the northern Nigeria is because they are receiving the requisite support and money. But again, why do we need a Scott Terry of a U.S. Congress to raise allegations before we take a motion to investigate.
Indeed.
And that is why we should be interested in how we conduct governance affairs in Nigeria. Even the motion, well received, is okay, but it's not enough. Yeah. You see, we have been inviting service chiefs, and we have to also know there are ways investigative hearings are conducted. It's not everything that is for showman or showbiz. It's not everything that is for the media. This is a high-level national security investigation involving ways of funding terrorism in Nigeria. It has to be done covertly, but recorded and classified. Because I hear people say, oh, we want people to come say how it's going so that the whole Nigeria will hear. It's not done that way. It's a national security investigation, and it's beyond. And you have to also bring in the NGOs, the international development organizations, all of them that are involved for the first time. Because yesterday, too, a motion was taken in the House of Rep. And I wouldn't want the House and the Senate to conduct investigation independently. Right now, what the leadership needs to do is to now set up a joint committee, to look into the issue of both the Senate and the House. And there should be thorough investigation. And why we must listen to the U.S. Congressman is that you have a Congress that the legislators there don't just wake up and speak. They do a lot of research. It may not be factual, but there are underlying facts that you have to look at. So for the first time in the history of Nigeria, the National Assembly should be ready for the biggest investigative hearing of their lifetime. Bringing all stakeholders involved, conduct the investigation in a classified manner so that the truth can come out, and then you leave it at the discretion of the president and the defense agencies to start taking action. Because if you're fighting an internal enemy, you don't need to put everything out there, but be genuine and sincere in the process.
Well, that's we're all agreed, aren't we, that an investigation needs to be carried out. Exactly. And that is also in line with what Senator Alin Dume was asking for. Let's move on from there. And to round off the week that was here in Nigeria, the glittering launch of former military President Ibrahim Babangida's much anticipated autobiography. It's taken 32 years, but this week, the book was released, a book that's a witness to the history that shaped a crucial period of this country, but also a personal story about IBB's remarkable journey from childhood to the highest office, a boy who became an orphan at the age of 14, but whose warm smile and easygoing manner made him likable and took him to the greatest heights. And let me come to you, Abba Kaka. We all know, if not directly, military President Babangida. We know of him and certainly felt his impact at a certain time in the history of this country and subsequently. And he earned nicknames like Maradona because of the way he played politics, and also the evil genius. But no one can deny that in spite of all those things, he came across as a very likable person.
He was, but he made a very, very big mistake by annulling the June 12 election. I was in Lagos at that time, and it took Nigeria back maybe 20 years, maybe 25, 30 years back. But now that he has admitted, and a season of, I'm glad that he did that, but that's why, I respect people like Pa Adebanjo as well as Chief Edwin Clark, who stood their grounds, even at that time. You understand? They are principled and courageous and have high convictions leaders. So, but coming back to the book, it's good that it came out, even though it's late, 30 years late. But, let our children understand that this is what happened in history. Abiola won the elections, but he was denied by the military because of their selfishness, their greed, and they don't mean well for the country. As one aspect of the book actually said, that the General Babangida said that he was not going to put his life for Nigeria. I was surprised that that one came out. But that now tells you what else is hidden, what else is not said in the book. Why did it take 30 years for this thing to come out. You know, Nigerians, this is was the most peaceful elections that I knew. And it was a Muslim ticket. Nigerians didn't care about your religion at that time. But the politicians have diluted everything in Nigeria now, that even when this Muslim ticket came on this time around, it has polarized the country. And the reason why it was polarized in the country was because people are pushed into their cocoons, into their corners. You know, we are supposed to be building a nation for all, irrespective of whatever your religion, from wherever you came from, whatever your ethnic background is. But this is what the military denied the country. And 30 years ago, it shouldn't have taken this long for him to admit.
Let me bring you in, Chibuzo Okereke, because I think a lot of people would agree with that assessment, certainly. But going beyond that, a lot of people would say that this is the one that has been recognized across Nigeria.
Yes.
But there are so many other underhanded things that go on in Nigerian politics. I mean, you're talking about the military annulling this, and because everybody was against the military and it was seen as an aberration,
Yes.
It kind of brought the country together. But if you go beyond that, I mean, there are a lot of people who are saying that even the most recent presidential election, that, I mean, there were things that happened there were so untoward, and it wasn't just that election, elections before that, where there's been so much allegations of corruption and manipulation and so on, that in every single instance where there's a general election, you might as well say, well, when's the book going to come out for somebody to admit that they messed up that election and apologize to Nigerians?
Yes, absolutely. And you see, with situations like this, you will see clearly that we are not building a nation, we are building individuals. And I think beyond the confession that is made by the former head of state, it's important for us to realize that it was not only MKO Abiola that put his life on the line. With this type of confession, we must now profile and honor all citizens that died in that struggle. Number two, INEC must now be compelled to release the official result. Because what I saw in that book was just a tally of figures, just that is a testimony of the key figure at the time. But we have the official result. With this, we should not declassify it, publish it, put it in our national museum, recognize and honor all the people that died in that struggle. And then we should now make a U-turn and change from individualized states to a national state, where things can be done. We need to have records in Nigeria so that documents of government is for government, not in the house of individuals and what have you. And for Christ's sake and for morality, you should no longer take even 5 years for people to own up to national tragedies of this nature. 30 years was a very long time, and I'm sure maybe he may have been compared to say so, but we have to also appreciate him for coming at this time of his life to own up such a national issue that has become a contested area. Well, I mean, everybody seemed to know the truth, but we needed the key player to say. And there was also a blame game that it wasn't his intention. It was actually Abacha that led the group that said so, that said that the election should be nullified. Again,
well, Abacha is not here to defend
he took responsibility. However, that also shows the challenges we face as a nation.
Right. Let me just come to you for the last word on that, because somebody said that as you get older, the burden of your sins become heavier.
Yes.
And so you need to relieve them by going to confession, basically. Yes. Because it's not just the June 12th election. Yes. I mean, that was obviously the elephant in the room, but there's also things like the death of the popular journalist Dele Giwa, the execution of General Maman Vatsa. Those things, I'm told, are mentioned in the book. I mean, I haven't sort of gone through it completely, but I certainly will. But I mean, that's is sort of a confessional for him, which I think he feels much better doing.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it's an issue of conscience. Once your conscience is either corrupt or compromised or whatever is in that line,
Right.
you cannot sleep well.
Right.
You understand? And it's a big burden on him, obviously, for all these years, but it's good that he came out. But unfortunately, now we have reached a stage in Nigeria, the corruption has so much destroyed, you know, good governance,
Right.
that you don't need, you know, you only need INEC and the courts to win elections.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
from mandates.
We're going to have to move on from there because we've got one more topic on the international scene. There was Ukraine and the Trump administration's decision to lean away from Kyiv and move towards Moscow in the search for a negotiated peace. But it is in Gaza. After a rare moment of hope in the Palestinian territory, with the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas appearing to hold against all odds, the world appears to be on the verge of shattering again. And let me come to you, Chibuzo Okereke, because that shattering happened indeed in the last 24 hours or so. Bodies being returned by Hamas to the Israelis as part of the deal. The hostage mother, Shiri Bibas, ended up not being Shiri Bibas. It wasn't her body. And also the evidence, according to the Israelis, showing that her two sons, the young boys, were murdered against what Hamas's assertion that they were killed in an Israeli attack a month after they got in. What is your reaction to all of that?
Well, I think there's a lot of underhand, going on, and with the threat from the U.S. and Trump and the new foreign policy direction is taking, the quest to take over Gaza and turn it, around. And a lot of all that issues, including his ultimatum that everybody should be returned by 12 noon, I think a Saturday before that issue. And that, didn't
nobody's
happen.
actually following that steadfastly.
Following that. So with this kind of issue, in terms of the hostages that were returned and the mismatch, is obviously going, because even the dead bodies at the end, Israel will still have to take actions, despite the ceasefire that is ongoing. So it's a burden.
Well, I mean, I think that it was very clear, and I'm going to move this on because we're almost out of time. It was very clear from the outset that some people died. The Israelis accepted that, and that people may have died as a result of Israeli bombing. They're just saying that after their own forensic examination, these two boys were actually murdered. But I think the key thing here is how they play this now, because any small thing, I mean, the Israelis are hurting, they're very angry again, and any small thing could tip the balance, in favor of a war again. The key thing here is to remember that Hamas, according to them, weren't the ones who abducted the women, because there were different groups there. The body that was given to them is what they returned to.
Exactly.
To Israel.
You see, we need to understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government
and we've got about a minute. So
never wanted this ceasefire to hold in the first place.
Right.
It was, they were forced on it, and the Israeli government has killed so many of its own citizens when they were being kidnapped. There was an order given by the former military chief that any truck or buses with Israelis being taken should be shot, and a lot of people were shot.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, there was a report to that.
Right.
But anyway,
Okay.
on what moral ground are we even talking about this?
On that note, I want to say thank you very much indeed. I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're indeed out of time. Abba Kaka is a public policy analyst and development expert, and Chibuzo Okereke is a legislative consultant and public policy analyst. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. And that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week from all of us here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.